Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a demonstration on 3 new wood stoves coming from Pomoly and how they can be utilized as we are coming into the hot tent season with summer coming to an end. So I'm going to get these stoves out of all the bags. We're going to have a look at them and we're going to be doing a burning test and a practicality test. So let's get things started right away. Alright, so all 3 of these stoves are completely brand new. They just came in a few days ago. Just going to get these set up on this piece of plywood here. And they are the Dweller stoves. You guys probably recognize these stoves from my bus camper video and my truck camping videos on the channel. I do have the medium sized in stainless steel. It's a 304 steel in the back of my truck and in the bus. So this version right here is the exact same size that is in my truck and bus. However, this version is new and it is titanium. There's a couple features that are changed that I'll go over on that. And I do have a full review on the 304 stainless steel version. I'll link that down in the description if you guys are interested. Over here we have the new size, which is the smallest, very, very small. And there's a couple features added to this that are quite interesting in comparison to the other 2 sizes. And then over here we have the largest version, which obviously is quite a bit larger. It is 304 stainless steel as well, and it does have a damper set up on the pipe, which I'll go through as we set these up. So the legs are underneath of these stoves, making it incredibly easy to set up and very practical to use. Give you guys a look at that right there for the center one. Now where this one is titanium, Pomoly did actually use their damper setup, which is on most of their backpacking stoves, to go hiking with the 3 knurled screws. You pop that on there. It's got the damper inside of it as well. And it comes with the spark arrestor, a pair of gloves inside of here so you can assemble your pipe for the first time without cutting your hands. As well as this looks to be a 3-meter titanium roll-up chimney pipe. Now, I actually have a chimney pipe that is already being used and is already pre-formed from hot tent season previous years. So I'm not going to be using the new pipe. I'm actually going to be using a pipe that I've already used previously. But it does come with the pipe. Coming over to the smaller stove, open this up, and I should mention that this medium stove and the small stove can both utilize a roll-up titanium chimney pipe if that's what you want to use with them. However, this one does come with the stainless steel sections, which are the same pipes that come with the Orokin stove from Pomoly as well. And I'll get measurements on these as well, so if you do have different pipe size diameter and you want to maybe adjust your pipes, you can do so. So it does come with a bunch of single sections of steel pipe. And then coming over to the large stove here, kind of the same deal, except this one has the damper incorporated in the actual pipe itself. Nice little butterfly valve there, so I'm excited to see how this burns. As well as the top section does have a spark arrestor built into the pipe. Same with the smaller stove on the other side. So I'm going to get these totally set up, get the legs deployed, get the pipes on top, and then we're going to move into how this test and demonstration is going to work for today. Alright, so just before I put wood inside of these stoves, we're going to take a simple measurement for pipe diameter, because I get asked this all the time, what size is the pipe diameter, and just a couple basic measurements. So starting with the small stove, I'm actually going to measure the top piece of pipe, and we're coming in at 2 1/4 inches, and these are steel pipes that come with this stove as mentioned earlier. Coming over to the titanium stove. Now I did switch up the pipes, going from a roll-up pipe to a sectioned titanium rigid piece, just because it's easier to get on there, to hold, not have to guy it out, and it helps with the equal length of stove pipes between the 3 different stoves. The measurement on this guy is also 2 1/4 inches. So for those of you who are wondering what stove pipes are compatible with it. Now the large stove is a little different, and I actually like this feature quite a bit. These pipes go on the outside of the damper piece, meaning they slip over top of the damper. And the same thing with this. Now this is much tighter fit. This is a little bit more relaxed because it's supposed to be a roll-up pipe. The large stove over here actually goes down inside, and Pomoly has done this. Get that off of there. So the pipe actually goes inside of the damper as opposed to over top of it. And Pomoly has done this with all sections, just like that. So basically, if you're going to be burning wet wood or damp wood or resinous wood, often the tar and the creosote will run down the pipe if you're not burning the stove hot. And if that happens, it will run outside of the pipe and go down. Now, I personally have never had this happen with this style of pipe system. I burn my stoves hot and efficiently that it actually burns it off in the pipe so it doesn't run down and drip all over the stove. I have seen other people have issues with that though in the past with various stoves, not just these stoves, all kinds of stoves. Pomoly has mitigated that by dropping them in, so now if you do happen to have that problem, it will run all the way down inside of the stove and burn off as opposed to running down the outside of the pipe or dripping onto the stove. And as mentioned earlier, the damper is inside of there. Now I'm going to get a quick measurement while we got that off. For those who are interested, I'm coming in at 2 3/4 inches. So if you're wondering what pipe would fit inside of it, or sorry, that's the outside diameter. Let's get the inside diameter for a little bit more accurate representation there. Let's drop this off of here. And inside diameter, we're coming in at, I'm getting 2 11/16. It is a little bit flexible, so it doesn't have to be absolutely exact, but those are some measurements to help you guys. For those of you who are interested, now Pomoly does have all of their stove specs, measurements, compatibility on their website, so if you're looking for more detailed information, as I said, this is not a review, it's more of a test. And the reason why I'm doing the test today is because these stoves are becoming very popular, as well as truck camping, RV camping, off-grid living, cabins, ice fishing shacks, and these style stoves are being implemented in a lot of those shelters. And where we're rolling into hot tent season, a lot of people want to be out doing that stuff. So I want to show how these stoves burn and what the difference is between the time of how long they're going to burn versus how much fuel you can put into them. So if you're looking for more information on the actual stove itself, I highly recommend going to the website and getting the information there, or jump over to my review video, which is down in the description, on this stove, and there is packed full of information, all the features and whatnot. Talking about the features, they're all pretty much the same, other than the little guy, they move the pipe off to the side, which makes it easy for cooking. So this is a standard 750 ml titanium pot. Give you all a look at practicality for like cooking. That's how that fits on there. This, you can get 2 of them on either side of the pipe and the handle, and of course the large stove, you could fit probably 5 of them. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all around the stove. One thing I have mentioned in the previous video is these handles are easily removable. If you do want to take your stove top off, you can then flip it over and grant access to the handles, with the exception of titanium. So these are actually titanium rivets, making it more difficult to do that. If you want to cut them off, I'm sure you could. I leave the handles on just because it makes it safer for not bumping your pot off of the wood stove, but I have seen people take them off before, just to help with cooking, more space on top of the stove. So with all that stuff aside, fire in the stoves, let's start this test. Alright, so now that I've got all three stoves burning at a pretty healthy rate right now using just wood, I gotta say it is throwing a ton of heat out right now. One thing with these stoves is there's next to no thermal heat going downward, so I'm not at any risk of any kind of heat going into the wood causing a fire. The sides get very hot, the top gets very hot obviously, the back gets fairly warm, and the front gets most of the heat coming right through that glass. That's actually too hot to hold my hand in front of that one right now. That one's extremely hot, and this guy, as small as it is actually throwing a ton of heat. So this one does not have any controls, as I mentioned before, in the damper. You can add one. You can get one from Amazon. You can modify this to have a damper if you really want to. The original stove that I have in my truck and bus of this size does not have a damper, and it works totally fine. So I'm interested to see, with this one having a damper control now and the large one having a damper control, what the difference is going to be and the achievable burn length and desired temperature. I think will be really interesting to see with those two stoves. This stove is just going to be a champ throwing out the heat. It's going to work no problem. So for today's purpose, I'm going to be using compressed wood logs. I use these often in my truck and in my bus build. These can be found at any local hardware store. So here in Canada, we have them at Home Depot, Kent Building Supplies, Canadian Tire, all over the place. And the reason I'm using these is they are uniform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break them down to the maximum size. So for this little guy, probably going to load in this big chunk here. I'm going to get one that stretches side to side, one log in that stove, and then the same thing with the larger stove, probably a whole log. And we're just going to place one in each stove, and we're going to start the test of how long will it burn. And I'm not going to adjust any of the damper settings while I'm doing that testing because it would be unfair for this little guy. So the dampers currently are wide open on these two stoves. The vents on the bottom are all wide open, and the vents on the top are also wide open. So right now they're burning at their highest possible burn rate, and I'm excited to see how this goes. So I'm going to let these burn down just a little bit more before I add in the fuel, and then we're going to start the test on the time and see how long they burn for, what the burn characteristics are, and take it from there. Alright, so it's looking like we're ready to load our test wood inside of the stove. Like I said, these are logs. There is no binder. It's just bound with pressure, so there's no fillers, no fuels, nothing. It's just compressed wood chippings. What I'm going to be putting inside of the small stove is a piece 6.5 inches long. The diameter of these are 4 inches in diameter. For the medium stove, we're going to be going at about 10.25 inches. And for the large stove, my face is actually burning standing right in front of these. We're going for 12 inches, and I feel that that's probably almost wall to wall on each stove. So get some of these flames burned down, load these in there, and I'm going to start a timer, and we're going to see what we can achieve with these logs. Alright, so I've got the fuel loaded in all three stoves. I gotta say, this titanium stove is changing colors really nicely. We got a lot of blues and purples starting to form on the sides and the top and a little bit on the front. They seem to be burning really strong, all three of them. It is exactly 12 o'clock noon. I've already taken note of the time, so I'm gonna let this burn for quite some time and see what differences we get with these stoves wide open. Now, just for quick show, because I know somebody's going to ask, what happens when you start manipulating the controls? So for this stove, let's shut the bottom 3/4 shut. Let's do this guy half shut. That one we'll leave all the way open. See what kind of a difference here we get just in a few moments. The little guy will burn very, very strong wide open, just like the other stove does of this model with no damper. It's basically full on or half off if you want to manipulate the bottom control. It is very responsive on all of these stoves, and the only way you could take out the ash pan is by opening the door, so keep in mind with that as well. I have found that with this size stove I can burn it all night long and not have to worry about dumping the ash pan until the next day. It does burn really well. It does have a reburn chamber in the rear as well as a baffle in all these stoves. So they burn very clean, and I don't find I have a huge amount of ash in the morning, but I do dump it after 24 hours of burn overnight. So you guys can see the flame pattern after manipulating those controls. I'm going to open them wide open again real quick. And already I can see this guy's bouncing back. It's starting to flame up quite a bit. So let's operate the damper on the large stove. We've got the damper knob over here. I'm going to close it down halfway. And right there I've already noticed that those flames started to slow down significantly. They're just kind of gently going up, where this is more sporadic. This has got a real nice gentle tweak, and then you can also continue to damp down the inlet and a little bit more of the inlet on top of the glass to really get it damped down. So the larger stove has 100% control. This medium stove also has 100% control, and what I mean by 100% is the bottom can be manipulated, the vent on top of the window can be manipulated, and the damper in the rear can. Whereas this guy over here is like 50%. You get the top of the glass and the bottom if you don't add a damper. This is burning really, really smooth. I can't even hear it. The flames are really nice and gentle, and the heat is just rocking out of this thing. So I'm going to open them all wide open again. Every control, every knob completely wide open. And like I said, I've taken note of the time. I'm going to let this do its thing for a couple hours, come back and find out which one died first and how long they burned for. Alright everybody, it's been a few hours and some interesting things have happened. So all the stoves are still putting out a ton of heat. They each have quite a clump of red hot coals inside of them, but I'm going to call it done and say that it is now time to add more wood if you wanted to keep a fire going inside of the stove. But like I said, they are still putting out loads of heat that if this were in a tent, a vehicle, a camper, a cabin, you would definitely not need to add any wood right now. They are still very, very hot. So I want to open up the doors and explain what happened here. So you guys can see coals inside of each stove, still very, very, very hot. Get those opened up. So interesting thing, each stove burned very, very similarly. The small stove went for about an hour and 10 minutes, I want to say, before it got to a point where it could use a piece of wood if you wanted to keep the fire going overnight. The middle stove was probably about an hour and a half, and the larger stove was closer more towards 2 hours, and that's with one single piece of fuel put inside of those stoves, running them totally wide open. So the vent, the bottom vent, and the damper on all of these stoves was 100% wide open. If you damp them down, I know personally from experience with a number of different stoves, using that wood source, they can burn for 4 to 6 hours long, depending on how you damp it down in different stoves. So keep that in mind if you do want to load these up and damp them down and have them burn all night long. certainly with these two, it could be very, very possible. This one, I don't doubt at all. If you loaded that up with 3 of those logs and damped it down, that would most likely go 8 to 10 hours, no problem. So I'm going to let these cool down all the way so I can get them packed up safely. I just wanted to show you guys what was left right now, and that's what I'm going to call pretty much burned out, even though you don't need to add any more fuel to. One thing that I also noticed is the damper on this stove. It is extremely sensitive, which is really, really nice. So even if you damp it down just like 1/8 of the way or 1/4 of the way, I noticed that the flame pattern does change quite a bit, which is really nice to have it responsive like that. As well as this guy over here, the titanium stove. It's very, very sensitive at the same time. And I found that the bottom draft, while using the damper in correlation with one another, is actually really responsive. So it's too bad that this guy does not have a damper that comes with it without modifying it or buying external parts to put a damper on there. So it would be nice to see the little guy have one. It does burn very strong and loads of heat. So one other thing is, if you plan on cooking on these stoves, this guy is metal, this guy is metal, they're all metal, but I mean steel. This guy's titanium, so it's very thin. I want to say it's 1mm titanium, and I believe these guys, the top plate is 2.5 or 3mm. You have to check the specs on the website. So these will retain more heat for cooking, whereas the titanium stove is going to be more centralized for a hot spot. You have to find that hot spot where you put your pan or pot to do your cooking or boiling water. So all in all, I gotta say, I am very impressed with the stoves, and I do have a use for this big guy right here. You'll have to check out my other YouTube channel, Destination Wilderness. Link is down in the video description to see what I plan on doing with this, because it's actually a very, very, very big project that is going to be heating the inside of. And these two, I haven't decided on. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section, what these guys would be practical for me on the channel. And perhaps maybe one video will implement those. So I hope this little test and kind of demonstration here was useful to some of you guys out there wondering what the stoves, how they burn, what kind of fuel you use, practicality, a little bit of information on the pipes, the dampers, the materials, the sizes, and like I said, the fuel. So these fuel logs, they are available in 2 sizes in my local area, 4-inch diameter or a 2-inch diameter. So I think if I were to use the small stove, I would go with the 2-inch diameter and fit more pieces in there. That way there's more of an air gap in between the pieces. And the reason for that is these logs do need to be broken up. So I will mention that I did open up all the doors. I want to say about halfway through the burn, and I actually used the poker and broke up the pieces to get the flames to start kicking through. If I did not touch them, guaranteed they would have burned for another 40 minutes, no problem. But by me breaking it up, speeding up the process a little bit to get some more action in there, that definitely sped up the burn time. So keep that in mind. If you guys have any questions or comments, drop them down below in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer all of them. And until next time, peace out, guys. I'll see you in the next video.